Hi, everybody. Welcome back in for this week's episode. This week, I'm actually going to continue with our conversation on Fabric Stash and how I organize mine. So, the last time I talked with you guys, we went over how I make my little mini bolts. Now, with regard to that, you guys had some fabulous comments. I was so excited to see all the questions and comments that you had, one of which I wanted to talk a little bit about today. Switch to overhead. So, some of you said, why don't you just grab the empty bolts that the fabric stores have, cut those in half and use those? Great question. I actually used to do this before I came up with this solution. This is why. Look at the difference in size between the two. For me, if you guys are anything like me, you have so much fabric and no place to put it, right? I only have one bookcase that I use. Okay. So my fabric's in my bookcase, and then my fabric is also in some other storage containers that are behind me. I'm going to show you in a minute. But when it comes to my bookcase, that's where the majority of my fabric is. And I just could not fit all of it in my bookcase when I did this solution. So that's why I went to this. But by all means, guys, if this is what you have available to you, then by all means, please use it. But just know that for me, I use these for any fabric cuts that are 3 yards or more. Because when it comes to these little mini bolts, if you have any more than 3 yards, it gets a little bit unruly and it's very hard to keep it square so that you can just cut right off of it. So I take anything that's over 3 yards and I put it on a solid bolt. On my bookcase, my bottom shelf is dedicated 100% to all of my full-size bolts. All of the other shelves above that is dedicated to all of my mini bolts. And I literally have, I would say, at least 150, if not more, on those three shelves. So I hope that helps you. Also, you guys had a great question. Do I actually mark how many yards I have on my mini bolts? No, I don't. I go through it way too fast. Literally, when I'm looking for something, I mean, you can kind of tell how much I have based on how many wraps I have. If you'd like to go ahead and mark those are that would be great. I also, on my shelf, I organize my mini bolts by color. I have all the colors for prints in their sections. Also for my solids, I have all of those together. Doesn't matter what color they are. So that's how I keep my mini bolts in my bookcase. So from there, I keep my fabrics on these mini bolts as long as they can wrap around one time. They'll stay on the mini bolt. But let's say what happens if, oh my gosh, it doesn't go all the way around. Okay, what happens then? Well, then they graduate to the next storage system that I have. Let me show you that. I have 12 shoe boxes. And these 12 shoe boxes, I have it by color. I also have one box for solids, and I have one box for multicolored fabric where I just can't guess what color it goes into. For my colors, this is what I have. I have a box for browns and tans. I have another box for whites and creams. And then I have boxes for purple, pink, blue, red, yellow, gray, orange, and green. Those are my 12 boxes. So when they get too small for the mini bolts, they go into my boxes, okay? If my boxes start to get really full, like this one is pretty ding dang full. When they get too full, now I'm going to have to process some of this into usable pieces. So what I like to do is I kind of like to take them out, see what I have, and turn them into pre-cuts. Let me show you how I store those. Switch to front. So behind me, you're going to see these little units here. By the way, the shoe boxes, I'm going to put a link down below on the best price that I can get these shoe boxes for. There's 12 of them. You get them through Amazon. I'll put the link below. And then I'll also put a link in here in down below in the description for these as well. I have 6 of these. They are little 3-drawer units that looks like this. I have 3 of them that I keep for my strips, and I have 3 of them that I keep for my squares. Now you guys need to decide what you want to use for your pre-cuts. What sizes do you like to use? You might not use as many as I do. I like to have every option available to me so that when I do create my pre-cuts, I'm not wasting anything as much as possible. So let me tell you what I have for squares. The smallest square I keep is a 1.5-inch square. Why? Because those are the ones that I use for my postage stamp blocks. These are 1-inch finished, so 1.5-inch squares creates those. So I keep 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5, and then I have an extra drawer down here that I can use for whatever. Sometimes I have half square triangles in there. Sometimes I'll put something that I'm working on currently. I have it marked over 5 inches, but not necessarily that's what I use it for. So every half-inch increment from 1.5 to 5 for my strips. The smallest strip that I will have is 1-inch strips. I use those for string piecing. They work great for that. So again, I work down in half-inch increments, starting at 1-inch strips. 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, and 5-inch strips. Okay? Anything below that, it has to be at least 1 inch, will go in my crumbs. Okay, so if it's wonky cut, it's weird, whatever, as long as it's an inch at the minimum, I will keep it for my crumbs. All right, so for my pre-cuts, let's go back to that now. Switch to overhead. All right, so I will basically take a look at what I have and I'll figure out what's best. Like I'm looking at this piece of fabric. This particular piece of fabric was cut along the selvage edge, so this is not selvage to selvage. Therefore, I will not keep it on my mini bolts. The only thing that goes on mini bolts is full width of fabric, enough to wrap around at least once. If it's cut any which way so that it is not with the fabric, it no longer stays on the mini bolt. Okay? So for this particular piece, I mean, it's a pretty large piece. I could probably create 10-inch squares, which I haven't even talked about. I do have one other location where I keep 10-inch squares for my layer cakes. I could create layer cakes out of this. I could create 2.5-inch strips. I could create 5-inch strips. I could create whatever I think is best for this particular piece of fabric. If I'm looking at this going, you know what, this would make beautiful blank, and that's the pre-cut that I will create with this. And again, it's going to be up to you on how you want to use your fabrics, what kind of pre-cuts you want to keep on hand. I think it's always lovely to be able to say, oh my gosh, I'm working on a project. I ran out of 4-inch squares. Let me grab my stash and see what I have that could possibly work for my project. It's so handy. Also, too, if you're just bored and you want to piece some things, you can piece 4 patches. Just grab one of these and start making 4 patches, and you can use it for another project some other day. So I hope this has helped you kind of give you some ideas of what you can do with the rest of your fabric stash if it doesn't work on a mini bolt or a regular bolt. create some pre-cuts. Get yourself some shoe boxes, put the larger cuts in there as well. It's always nice when you can have your sewing room and your fabrics close at hand, ready to use at any time. So I hope this has helped you. If it has, consider giving this video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Turn on that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Also, too, in the comments below, do me a favor. Can you put your ideas of what you'd like to see for future videos down there? I'd love to see them. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. I'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.